Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, composer Justin Hurwitz discusses his collaborative relationship with Damien Chazelle, director of La La Land and Whiplash. This discussion was hosted at the 2023 Venice Film Festival in collaboration with Cartier.
Justin, so you've been working obviously with Damien for all of his films. You've known him since your student days. All these films are incredibly seminal. How would you describe the key to your success of having created these beautiful partnerships in these films?
Mm-hmm. Well, the key to our success. Well, Damien, first of all, writes these movies and makes these movies that I think are hugely inspiring for me personally. From Whiplash, which really spoke to me and really got at a core philosophy that Damien and I share about the sacrifice and drive and what it takes to be really, really good at what you do. That movie really spoke to me, and then La La Land really spoke to me about similar themes of being an artist, being somebody who creates, and what it takes to what you have to sometimes sacrifice. So Damien makes movies, first of all, that I just love, that really speak to me, and he values music. Damien values music in a way that I think maybe no other filmmakers do. The way he makes music a part of his process from the very beginning. Usually as soon as he has a script, he wants to start thinking about what the music is all the way to the very end. So that is so great for me and feels so good to be a part of the process and to be able to build things with him from the very beginning to the very end, so that I feel like I can do my best work and so that the music can hopefully just really belong to the movie. I never want to feel like the music has been slapped on at the end or is an afterthought. It's the opposite of the way Damien works. The music has just been developed over the course of a very long time, so it just really hopefully belongs to the movie, and that's always the goal, to make sure that people can hear the music a year later, 5 years, 10 years later, and know exactly what movie it's from, because it's really just been built to belong to that movie.
I feel like your music is, if anything, a character in these movies, And I think musical partnerships have had a long history. You have Rodgers and Hammerstein and Gilbert and Sullivan, to name a few, obviously more lyricists and kind of composers. But yours brings together music with the very complex medium of film. And what are the challenges for you of working music into the body of a film in such an integral way, in such a way that it does become a character in a way?
Yeah. Ultimately, the score has to serve the movie. I mean, you are first and foremost, you have to do what the movie needs and requires. But we also, Damien and I do appreciate when music can stand outside the movie. So we're always trying to do both if we can. And it's tricky because when you're making a movie, there are certain timings and certain structural things and certain, as I'm writing music to a scene, I'm having to hit certain moments and hit certain beats and fit into certain timings. But I ideally want to make sure that the melody resolves the way it's supposed to, unfolds the way it's supposed to, has its own musical logic and musical integrity. So to be able to do both of those is tricky, and it's part of the reason that I'm so glad I work with a filmmaker like Damien, who cares about music the way he does, because he values the same things in a theme or a melody or a cue of music. So he's sometimes willing to work with me on making sure that the scene can fit the music, just as so often a composer's making sure that the music can fit the scene. It works both ways with our movies, and doesn't often work that way in other films. But with us, it's just a constant conversation and collaboration through the whole editing process of the movie to make sure that whether the scene has to get changed by a little bit to let a piece of music resolve right, or probably more often the music has to, be changed to fit a timing in the movie. One way or the other, we want things just to fit perfectly. And I hope people can feel that when they watch one of Damien's movies, just how meant to be the score and the picture feel. I hope that's how it comes across.
Your projects are quite long in gestation, and the way that you guys work is quite long. How do you know ultimately, like, when the score is done? Is it ever done?
Yeah. Well, I think it's in both of our personalities to never feel like we're done and to just always want more time and always want... I mean, when I listen to any work I've done, any old work, my ear immediately goes to the things I wish I could do better, the things I could go back and just fix in the orchestration or in the mix or something. So that's just who I am. I'm just like never really satisfied with my own work. But when it comes to actually like finishing a movie, it's really just there's never enough time, and it's the grown-ups have to say you're done, or this is when you have to be done. We would just keep going and going and going if we could, but there are always people who are the grown-ups in the room who are like, this is the schedule, you have to finish mixing the music, you have to finish mixing the movie by these days, and like pencils down. It's almost like, the end of an exam in school is just like, pencils down, you are done. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to have to finish it, but it's also in some ways a relief because we just kill ourselves making these movies. I'll just speak personally. Like, I've never been more exhausted than about a year ago finishing Babylon, coming home every night at 4 a.m. from the studio and waking up early and doing it again day after day after day and just trying to get it all done and get it done to the level that I wanted it to be done. Because that once you finish it, it is what it is forever. The movie is mastered, meaning it is a print and it's a file and it is what it is. It's always going to be that. So I just want to give it everything I can possibly give it to have as few regrets as possible. I will have plenty of regrets, but I want to have as few regrets as possible. It's never done, but at some point they make you finish.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness somebody says pencils down, because I have a feeling you'd be tinkering with it forever.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how often do you actually get to experiment with new instruments, with new sounds, with, you using the synthesizer to like warp all these very traditional instruments? So like, how often do you actually get to just play?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why we like to start so early, as soon as there's a script or as when Damien is storyboarding the movie, is to give us time to experiment and find new sounds, find new approaches. It's like an exploration usually, and it's a long conversation between me and Damien, and it's a lot of sending things back and forth and trying something and talking about it and trying something different. We love when our scores can have a sound that just belongs to that movie and no other movie. And that's always the goal. That's kind of like the highest goal, is how do we make a score that you can hear 1 year, 5 years, 10 years later, and you just know exactly what movie that's from. And to find a sound that can be specific enough to that movie can take some exploration. So with like First Man, it took a while before we found the theremin as one of the main instruments. It took a while before we found some techniques we use to make the strings sound really weird, really shaky, by putting all the strings, the violins and violas and cellos, through a Leslie rotor cabinet. This cabinet where a speaker spins around. We recorded the strings and put it all through that to give it just a different color, a different sound than hopefully people had heard. But those ideas take time. They take time to, I play around, usually I start composing at the piano, and as soon as we have the themes, I move to the computer, and I use a lot of virtual instruments and a lot of things. I'll record it all later on real instruments with real musicians, but there's a lot of like playing around in the computer, making mock-ups, just playing around with ideas and finding those sounds. And Babylon, I wouldn't say there was there was no weird instrument, any one weird instrument like the theremin, but there were a lot of, I would say, the colors that we created by mixing together so many, just different kinds of music and different. There's just so many, drawing on so many world music traditions, and putting together like familiar instruments, like a jazz band, like a brass band, and using them in ways that were hopefully very unexpected, like using brass to sound like elements of dance music, of modern, like EDM or modern dance music, with risers and things that would like throw you into sort of drops. Those were again like those were again like the product of a lot of experimentation and a lot of playing around over many months before we shot the movie, of like, these are the, finding the right instruments and then finding ways to use them that would hopefully sound unexpected and like its own thing, so that hopefully people can hear that score like any of the other scores and just know what it belongs to.
I love the way that you use colors of music, like how you mix these colors in. And I'm curious how you think about characters in film, or even the actors, and are there certain when the cast is finally cast, does that at all prompt you in terms of even like specific sounds that make them perhaps more individual?
Yeah. I don't really look at the casting too much. I would say one exception would be a musical. So if you're going to have like Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone singing your songs, then you definitely have to think about their voices and their personalities a bit. But for a typical movie, I'm not really thinking so much about the actors, but I am thinking about the characters more. So the characters on the page that Damien has written, that's everything really. That's kind of where you start as a film composer. Thinking who those people are, what they're feeling throughout the story, what they're feeling at different moments, because that's what you're composing. You're composing those moments. So you do have to think about those things. As the movie comes together, once you're in post-production, now you're watching the performances, you're watching the scenes. So you're taking in what the actors are doing. So you're, of course, being influenced, inspired, and told what to do by how they're playing the scenes, how they're delivering the dialogue. It's kind of true for all the elements of the film. So by that point, I'm seeing the costumes, I'm seeing the production design, I'm taking it all in and trying to respond to it or create something that works with it. That's just part of the whole thing. But the actors and the performances are, probably the most obvious thing that you are seeing and reacting to as a composer.
Through some of the research we've done, we've found out that you love sourcing musical talent on YouTube. And I'd love to find what stands out to you as like kind of individual talent that sort of speaks to you through finding them on YouTube.
Yeah. So Babylon is the first score I've done where picking the musicians was a huge part of the process. I've never done that before. Usually I write the music, I orchestrate it, and then we book the orchestra. And I know a few of the musicians, and I request a few people, but it's basically the orchestra with the usual suspects. Babylon was the first score where I wanted very, very specific and unique voices in some of the roles, like the trumpet, one of the saxes, some drums. Like, it had to be I wanted unexpected sounds and unexpected styles, and I wanted musicians to bring their own brilliance to it, to do things that I never would have thought to write, or play things in a way I never would have thought to, conduct it or express it in a way that I wouldn't have done myself. So I just went looking as far and wide really as I could for musicians that I found were exciting and unique and very specific. So I found some on YouTube, just went looking for, searching trumpeters, and searching, at one point I searched, saxophone dance music, and saw this guy who, he's very well known. He was just new to me. A lot of people know him though, Leo Pellegrino, who has just a very unique style of playing dance music on a baritone sax. So that became, a really important ingredient of that score. Then there was this sax player in LA, Jacob Cesny, who I'd seen on just this grainy YouTube video of him playing a little jazz club. in LA, and I don't think he'd done any film music at that point, but I saw this like little cell phone footage of him playing just the most wild solo at a little club. And I was like, that's the sound we need. So we got him to come in, and he just did such unexpected and such really audacious things in the studio that just became a absolutely critical sound in the score. And that happened just a bunch of times where I went searching for, sometimes I didn't even know what I was searching for. I just wanted to find something interesting, something unique, and just found so many musicians who made that score what it is, and it just wouldn't be what it is without them.
That's incredible. But I'm just curious whether you talk about sort of like dance saxophone, is there like a specific instrument or a sound in itself that kind of brings it, because you have this, you have this amazing mix of references where it sort of sounds familiar and you've sort of heard it before, and yet it's completely new. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously your magic and your sort of secret sauce. And I'm just curious, like, is there something that you will always go back to make sure that somewhere embedded in the film there's this thing that's your sort of little I don't know, secret trail or instrument that always has to be there?
I think it depends on the score. Every score needs something different. So there is no one instrument or one thing that I think needs to be in every score. I mean, every score we've done has some different instrumentation. Like Whiplash is obviously the big band music in the scenes, but then the dramatic score is a very twisted, slowed down, detuned big band, because that's what served that movie, which is essentially a thriller. La La Land was big, lush orchestration with a jazz combo at the center, surrounded by orchestra, and First Man was this weird intersection between electronic sounds and orchestra, and technology meets humanity, and Babylon was just almost like a kitchen sink of sounds to create this very eccentric, circus universe. So it depends on the score. No score we've done has had the same instrumentation. But I would say as a composer, I have certain sensibilities, and as a filmmaker, Damien has certain sensibilities and preferences that guide the music into a sound that is in some ways familiar. I think there's hopefully a signature in some way, even if it's at a harmonic level or a melodic level, things that I do, that we do together that sound like our scores. And I think it's also like a tricky line that you need to walk as a composer, but really as any artist, to have your sound, your signature sound, and to be recognizable, but not repeat yourself like truly or too much. It's this sort of tricky balance we need to find between having our sound but not doing the same thing every single time.
Yeah, well, you do it beautifully. So we are in Venice for Mostra, and I'd be curious how you would describe Venice musically.
Venice. I mean, the whole city is just like a work of art to begin with. Like everywhere you look, it's just gorgeous. Hundreds years old buildings and so much history here. I just learned recently like how many composers, like not even Italian composers necessarily, worked here. Like I learned Stravinsky's buried here because he worked here so much, and it makes sense because it's such an inspiring place and such a beautiful place. And if you're making art, why not be in a city that is art?
During your masterclass, we left with that initial scene of La La Land, and that tune is stuck in my head and will be for the next month. And I'm just curious, what's the tune in your head that's not your own tune that's stuck in your head right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I found myself humming like Olivia Rodrigo songs this week. So it's on the radio a lot. Nobody believes me, or it surprises people, but I listen to the radio. I listen to pop radio when I'm in the car, which in LA is all the time. Hours a day you're in the car. So that's what I listen to. I listen to the radio, and I love it. I love pop music. I love catchy music. I love new production, hearing new sounds sometimes, and melodies that very often stick with you. I mean, that's why it's popular.
Olivia Rodrigo. There you go.
Yeah.
Who knew? Justin Hurwitz.
Oh, I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. Big Justin Bieber fan. I love all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah.
It's so true. Amazing. You're incredible. Thank you so much. It's an honor to meet you and to talk to you.
hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.